Are you looking for hot takes and guests yelling over top of each other? Well, you came to the wrong place. This is the final word, where we talk about sports like they used to. All opinions are welcome, but that doesn't mean you are right. Hosted by Greg Rector. Welcome in.
Hey everybody, this is Greg Cowboys at Team MBS Media, and I'm joined by Jim Wickens. He is at NFL Draft Fanatic, and Cincy Planner is his other Twitter handle as well. How you doing today, Jim?
Well, Greg, I am doing very good. It's nice to be here on a Saturday.
Yeah. We've got a little bit of time before the Stanley Cup Final starts, so we may as well spend it productively here. We're in a very deep DM room on Twitter, are we not?
Oh, that Draft Professor group chat is a thing of beauty. It is.
Yeah. There are currently 79 of us in there. And we talk about the NFL draft, obviously. And right now we're doing the summer scouting. I've already done 2 programs with you, the Penn State and the Notre Dame team, and we're going to do South Carolina on Tuesday. But you also have others who do it on other nights as well, covering other schools. So anybody who follows that school up north, a team that I despise, as you all know, I will not be on that one. I just won't be. But again, the site that you have as well, where you can do your own drafting like the other mock draft sites out there. Explain to people why you did this.
Yeah, so I created Draft Professor. I think this is the 4th draft cycle for it. So I got bothered because whenever I used another simulator, the results kept coming back the same. Like if I were to look at like the first 64 picks, they weren't changing much. I'm like, well, that's not like it. There needs to be a random factor. And I pitched my idea to one of the simulators. They listened to me and then they never did anything about it. So I went and I hired a developer, and her and her sister have been working with me for 4 years. So we have a Draft Professor simulator, and we have a lot of other features on that site that cater to podcasters. So one of the other pet peeves I had is I didn't think podcasters covered the draft as well as they could have. And I said some of it is the simulator should show you some of the things that you should be talking about on a podcast. So I love the Draft Professor Podcast Network because we're using my simulator when we podcast, right? So we can cover the draft in ways that most other podcast channels don't. And there's a lot of dimensions to that. You've been involved with a lot of the content, and I remember talking with you and Brock and several others about it 3 or 4 years ago.
Yep.
But the idea is to keep growing. There's technology that the other simulators don't have that I'm trying to bring to the mock draft community. We have podcast content, same concept. We're not the podcast channel to get your top 10 list. No, if all you want is a top 10 list, you can get that at Draft Professor. But we have daily podcasts. We're not doing a top 10 list more than once a week.
Right, exactly. Which is what Bill, Jeff, and myself do at Team MBS. We give you our top 5 or top 10 on every position, and then we'll talk about the rest of the guys and all that other jazz. But at the Draft Professor site, we'll go deeper into every team's available guys who are available this year, and those who we think will go back to school and all that other good sort of stuff in the summer scouting. This is the area where I was excited with you was when we built our own 22 boards, right?
Yep.
That was That was very good because Will and I were able to get you a whole bunch of players that you had no idea who they were.
Yeah.
Right.
And the biggest challenge with running your own draft simulator is making sure that you have a good player list.
Yeah.
It blew me away as to how complicated having not even the order of the board, just are the right players on the list in some order. And when I created Draft Professor, the pitch that I gave to the original 12 people that joined is, we're going to focus on the top 175 players. That's rounds 1 through 5. And you and I have talked about this numerous times. An NFL team is built in the first 5 rounds. And yeah, you'll have plenty of success stories, in round 6 and 7. But realistically, if you look at the GMs that are managing playoff teams, their 4th and 5th round picks are playing a role.
Yeah.
It's not about necessarily that you need 5 rounds worth of starters. It's okay for your 5th round pick to be a backup corner that's playing special teams and returning kicks.
Bingo, because as I always say, special teams is 1/3 of the game. It's not just about the quarterback. It's not just about a wide receiver and the running back. No, the guys up front matter as well. The defenders all matter as well. And the kicking game matters. It really does.
Kickers are people too.
Yeah. I mean, even though they don't get drafted, that's fine, But on some teams they get picked, but again, that the Team NBS Media Draft Central, you've seen Jeff and Bill and myself on day 3 go through every player that is picked, and we know who these guys are. That's I always bring up Brock Purdy because he was, of course, Mr. Irrelevant, and I said at the time the Niners got themselves a very good quarterback, and I was getting laughed at. And I said to these guys who were laughing at me, did you not see him play as a junior? Huh? No, they only focused on his senior season, right?
Yep.
And that's a mistake. And again, that's something that people who scout these teams understand, that you look at their whole careers. That's why we do the summer scouting that we're doing right now. You've got guys on in the room who are ranking players, whereas me, I don't rank anybody at this point. You know that, because again, I'm going based upon what I saw them do as a freshman or a sophomore, or as a junior. But I haven't seen them play this year. I don't know how they're improved. So I don't rank anybody until like week 6 or so of the NCAA season, right?
Yeah, and we're going to have, I think we just recorded our first top 10 podcast with Randall, who's been on NBS Media numerous times, and Bill. That was recorded this week. Ironically, that's actually playing as soon as this podcast ends.
Yeah, there you go.
So we're going to do that a little. Part of it is, I think that's what fans, let's say casual fans, just want to see a top 10 list, right? Whereas I think a lot of the Draft Professor content is geared more towards people that watch tape. Because when we're giving an analysis of the player, we're talking about specific games, and we saw this, and there's discussions of, did 2 people watch the same game and see the same thing?
Yeah.
Because we've had plenty of discussions in the Draft Professor chat. Like, I remember somebody posted a Blake Miller rep, and it was, let's say November, December last year. And somebody was saying that's a textbook rep. And somebody's saying, well, the edge didn't use the right technique. Miller used a bad technique. They couldn't even agree on the rep. If it was a good rep for the edge, a good rep for Blake Miller. But, when you're watching tape, everybody, this isn't black and white. Because you don't know what the play call was. So you don't know what he was asked to do. And was he using the right technique for what he was asked to do? Or was he using improper technique, and you're going right. Like there's a lot, but it's hysterical. They posted one rep, and the draft professors couldn't even agree on the one rep.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, this is why I don't use PFF, because they don't know the play that's called either. I don't know what play has been called. You don't know what play has been called. And again, when people talk about the schemes and stuff that teams use, Matt Eberflus is a cover 2 guy. He learned from the Tampa system, right? But guess what? He's running a cover 3 right now for the Cowboys. Why? Why is he running cover 3? Because he wants to stop the running game. You know? So again, you get all these opinions out there about these players and all that other jazz. But from my view, I say wait until you've gotten 6 weeks into the NCAA season before I start ranking guys anywhere. Because again, we don't know who's going to end up injured as well.
Yeah, so we tend to start like right now. I would call it, obviously, it's summer scouting. We're doing like 40% of our content is summer scouting, 40% is analyzing NFL teams, and then I should actually say 60% is summer scouting, because 3 out of our 5 podcasts are covering the current draft class, but most of it's covering the player.
Yeah,
like when we did Notre Dame, we may have asked, do you see the players day 1, day 2, day 3?
Yeah.
That's as close as we want to get to ranking players right now, really.
Exactly.
Do we have this wide receiver ahead of this one? Like maybe by a day. But even that is so fluid, because one of the things that we find with how we create content at Draft Professor starting in October is that we will likely be among the first to be able to talk about a lot of players. So Randall was the first one that I heard talk about Jack Besh, right? So, and again, Randall's been on NBS Media numerous times with Draft Central. Well, Randall, like the second podcast we did last year, he's like, Jack Besh is going to go in the top 64. Yeah. Like that's not a day 2 pick. That's an early day 2 pick. And he was able to see that from 2 or 3 games of Besh this year, and then whatever he likely watched of Besh from previous seasons.
That's right.
But there were other podcasts that admitted that they did not watch Jack Besh till he got a Senior Bowl invite in January.
Yeah, and again, this is why when we had our guys who were coming on Team MBS from Southern Mississippi, a 1-9, a 1-10 school, right, or 1-11, sorry. People were saying, well, these guys can't be. Yeah, they can be. Their school record does not matter. And if people want real evidence of that, Aaron Rodgers only won 7 games at Cal in any season. 7 was his maximum number of games. Well, he's got 4 NFL MVP awards. How did that happen? Right?
Yep. No, you're exactly right. Like you don't scout the helmet.
That's right.
So that falls into don't scout the helmet, right?
Yeah.
Evaluate the players. Yes, a significant number of NFL players come from the SEC, the Big 10, Big 12, ACC, right? I mean, the statistics are there. You can go Google and find the articles. We were talking about an article on a podcast earlier in the week for that very reason, as to like, were the players being drafted from specific schools? Did they stay at those schools for 4 years?
Yeah.
Right. We were trying to kind of dig in as to, do we see some trends? But you have to scout every player. You have to look, they're draft eligible. Is there, I think the biggest assessment that we're making in the summer is we're trying to say, do they already have a draftable grade? Now, right now at the Draft Professor, if you look at the simulator, there's about 450 to 500 players, and at least one person has given every one of them a draftable grade.
Yep.
Okay.
You know.
Well, so we took a list of 1,000 and we got it down to 500.
Yeah.
We're 50% efficient at this point of the process. I don't know if that's good or bad, but the list that we started with, like in April for summer scouting, was at like 800, 850 players. about 150 got added. So that list is 1,000. And we have a draftable grade on 500 of them. Well, there's going to be 60 that go back to school. Right? So out of that list of 500, probably 60 go back. And then a few are going to get hurt. And we've just got to start narrowing that list of 500. And then you're always going to have a Carson Schlesinger. Right at this time last year, nobody even knew how to spell Schlesinger. Right?
I do.
Oh, you did? Okay. Because he didn't play much his first 3 years.
No. But again, I saw him play that season before. And then he came out last year, and he was very good, right? But again, most people did not even know how to spell Schlesinger, as you said. I mean, they just didn't.
And then even last year at this time, I doubt too many people would have been talking about Jack Bash.
Randall and I were, but again, TCU has a special meaning to me because that was my Aunt Martha's school that she loved to go see was TCU. And that's the first college game I ever got to go see was a TCU game because it was Aunt Martha. And that was on a Thanksgiving weekend after watching the Cowboys play, right? So, I got to see the TCU, and I'm trying to figure out because, of course, being up here in Canada at the time, well, it was the Texas Longhorns. Who's this TCU character? What a horned frog? I don't know what a horned frog is. But did I ever get a lesson on the hatred in the state of Texas? Holy moly. Whoa. I mean, we're talking some serious disgust for anything that plays in Austin. College Station is the same way. Like, people just despise those two schools. SMU and TCU are rivals because one's in Dallas, one's in Fort Worth. Okay. There you go, right? And it's very, very interesting to find out these things. Tyler Shaw last year. There was a little bit of chatter about Tyler, but again, I knew Tyler because he had beaten Justin Herbert out at Oregon until he got injured.
Yep. So Dan from Home Squad Sports.
Yeah.
There's two people from Home Squad. So Dan and Dalton. There we go. D&D.
Yeah.
Right. So Dalton is on the Tuesday podcast with you.
Yeah.
Dan is actually going to be filling in for Dalton this week in South Carolina. So shout out to both of them. Thanks for stopping by, guys.
Absolutely.
And I believe they do a lot of their content is geared more towards the high school recruiting classes through college. They're I don't know how much NFL coverage they do, but they cover through the NFL draft. But I've noticed that they're focusing on the QB recruiting classes right now. So if you're looking for info on the quarterback recruiting class of, I guess that would be 2020, the class of 2026.
Yeah.
Home Squad has that content in their feed right now.
Yeah. Home Squad guys, how do you explain the fight on clowns, USC having the number one class of 2026? Go ahead and put that in the comments for us. But I don't understand that. But okay, because I don't even think Lincoln Riley is going to be there after this year. But that's another story.
So USC moved to the Big Ten, correct?
Yep. So
I think the combination of Big Ten plus California weather. Right, like
it could be that, but again, Lincoln Riley has never been able to accomplish anything defensively. But his recruiting class for 2026 seems pretty damn loaded on defense. So who's responsible for that? That's an interesting look at 2026 because I know the number 2 school in the country is the Fighting Irish. It's Notre Dame. And I'm looking at these 2026 Lincoln Riley. How? But again, we've seen Texas A&M for years be at the top of the recruiting classes, and every one of their 4- and 5-star guys ends up being a whole lot less than what the world thinks of them coming out of high school. So, yeah, that's the draft professor stuff. Let's go into Jim's world where you grew up, Jim. Rochester, New York, home of the Rochester Americans of the American Hockey League.
So locally we call them the Amerks. I think it says Americans on the jersey.
Yeah.
It's funny because I hear you say Rochester Americans, and I'm like, he's talking about the hockey team, right? It's the Amerks. So if you read the local news, it's all Amerks, but the team is the Americans. You are correct.
Yes.
So,
but the Amerks, Amerks, is how it's put out.
Yes.
In the media, even in the local, it's Amerks. Okay, Amerks. Okay, but that must have been a pretty wild place to grow up in the time you were growing up.
Wild. I have a hard time imagining Fairport, New York, and the word wild in the same sentence. It was a great place to grow up. So I will say a couple things stand out. So first of all, Rochester Amerks games were really cheap entertainment. Like there was a period there in the 90s and the 2000s I was getting in for 10 or 12 bucks a ticket.
Yeah.
And Cincinnati is the Cyclones, and I'm usually in for like 15 to 20 a ticket. And ironically, the Cyclones are the farm team for Rochester.
Yeah.
It's hysterical. But yeah, so growing up, I got to see Jody Gage play. So Jody Gage was like a career AHL player. So he got a couple stints up with Buffalo, but they were, filling somebody for an injury for 3 games, and he comes back down to Rochester. But the Sabres did a good job of making sure that they had some veterans on the AHL team. So Jody Gage was one. They had another guy named Claude Verret. I know, rest in peace to Scott Metcalf. That was a player I saw. And I think you and I were talking, because I think he got traded to Edmonton at one point.
Yeah.
So yeah, like it's a good city from the standpoint of, we got minor league hockey there. Fairport, New York is a great place to grow up. And then Rochester, New York is the home of the garbage plate. So if you aren't familiar with the garbage plate, it's a hamburger, macaroni, bread, and everything's touching.
Everything is together.
Everything's touching. So that's a garbage plate. I was actually just out in Long Island, and they had a garbage pile. So a garbage pile was pulled pork, pulled chicken, coleslaw, macaroni and cheese, jalapenos, and it was all touching, and it was served in a really small bowl. But it was, I will say, that was good mac and cheese. Well,
the mac and cheese is the key to all of that. It really is.
So
yeah.
And let's see what else. So Fairport, New York is home of the Red Raiders. It's a rather large school district. They won the Section 5 title one of the years I was in high school. I would just say it was a quiet suburb, and my parents moved there in 1977. So Fairport at that time was farms. Yeah. With like 3 housing developments. I saw the rest of Fairport get built up. So like we would go walk through the construction sites as kids and stuff. It's a swamp one year, and 5 years later they're putting houses on top of it. That kind of thing, right? Like they're filling in swamps.
Well, I've seen this happen here in Calgary, because the first time I was in Calgary, I was a little kid. The second time I was a teenager in high school, and it had already grown quite massively. But now we're at almost 1.6 million people. And you want to talk about, all the farmland around town. It's all gone. It's gone. I mean, it's unbelievable. So, The way that the growth has happened up here is just insane, absolutely insane. So you also suffer from a disease that I call Bill's Mafia-itis, like Randall.
I'm not suffering. I'm enjoying every minute.
Oh, no. You guys are suffering because, of course, you've been to the Super Bowl 4 times in a row without a win. So, now when I talked with Randall about this, you also know that I watch Premier League soccer over in England, right? And they always knock down those bottom 3 teams. They go down a division, and the top 3 teams go up into the Premier League. You and the Vikings, because you both have 4 Super Bowl losses, you guys are both out of the NFL if you lose a 5th game. I'm sorry. That's it. What do you think? Don't you like that idea?
No, the journey. So first of all, the journey to get there is highly enjoyable. And one of the conversations that's going on with, let's say, the Bills podcast that I follow and things, is that if Josh Allen never wins the Super Bowl, is this a failure? You want to win, but realistically, like if you look at those 4 Bills Super Bowl teams, the number of Hall of Fame players on those teams is high, and it would be higher had they won 1 game.
Yep.
Right. We might be talking like,
had you beaten Washington the way that you should have, you might have a couple of more Hall of Famer members in that team. But I'm sorry, there was no way you were going to beat those 2 Cowboys teams. There was just no, that was over. Those games were over, and they were over quickly.
Yeah, so that 52-17 loss, that one, like, that's delved into my mind. So I was watching it with my fraternity brothers up in Flint, Michigan, and I was ready just to get up and leave the room, and they made me sit down. And like, I'm not a big guy.
Yeah.
Right. I'm 160, 170 pounds, right? There's a reason I'm an engineer and I'm not a professional athlete, right? There's a lot of reasons I'm not a professional athlete, but let's just leave it at there's not a lot of sports for somebody that's 6 feet tall and 170 pounds.
Yeah.
So I had 300-pound men holding me in my seat, making me watch 52-17. They wouldn't let me cheer when Don Beebe strictly unled. They wouldn't let me. So I have vivid memories of that game.
Yeah.
But the memories are less of the game and more of the people that were around me. And what I will say about entertainment, whether it's this podcast, the podcast I host, you're watching football, Premier League soccer, is enjoy the people around you while you're going through whatever fandom that you are. That's what you should be doing in life. Enjoy the people around you. Yeah.
Like I love watching the Sky Sports coverage with Gary Neville and Roy Keane. Roy Keane is the one man who ever played for Manchester United who I would allow onto the Anfield field as a Liverpool Red. He's the one man, nobody else. But Jimmy Carrer, who played 737 games for Liverpool, is also on the broadcast. And the fun that these guys have with one another, it's just hilarious. And then, when you see Manchester United at Old Trafford losing to the Liverpool Reds 5-0, they come to Anfield and lose 7-0, and you see the reaction of their fans. It is just hilarious. I mean, I don't get that upset over any outcome of any game anymore. I mean, when I was a young guy, Super Bowl 10 and Super Bowl 12 were painful experiences for me because those Steelers beat the Cowboys. That's it. After Super Bowl 12, I understood that, okay, you can't always win and all that other jazz, right? I get all that. But
but those Cowboys teams, like the number of times that a coach will be labeled, they can't win the big one. Don Shula got labeled that way.
Yep.
Tom Landry got labeled that way.
Yep.
The Raiders were having some issues there. Now, granted, the Raiders That's right. Did the Raiders go to Super Bowl 4? Yeah, they did.
Yeah.
Or no, that was the Chiefs. The Chiefs beat the Vikings.
Super Bowl 2 was the Raiders. Super Bowl 2.
Right, but I was trying to remember when they got their first win. Right.
Oh,
My point was
that was with Madden, and
that would have been 77. The Raiders were labeled
Super
they
Bowl
can't
11.
win the big one. Right.
Super Bowl 11.
Andy Reid in Philadelphia can't win the big one.
Yeah.
Right. I think, what was it, with Donovan McNabb, they went to 4 straight NFC title games and lost.
Danny White was in the same boat for the Cowboys. After Roger Staubach left, he went to the NFC. Couldn't win it. Boom, he's a loser. Blah, blah, blah. Danny White was a very good quarterback, guys. It was just that these other teams were at that time. They were better.
He's not Staubach, but how many people are?
Well, even Roger Staubach. I mean, yes, they played in those NFC Championship games, but Roger Staubach had a miracle pass caught by Drew Pearson. It was not the throw that was very good, because Drew Pearson had to come back for that Hail Mary catch.
That was the invention of the Hail Mary.
It
wasn't called the Hail Mary before that play.
That's right.
It was called the Hail Mary after that play. Yes.
Yeah. You know, and why do you think I always say I'm sick and tired of everybody talking about quarterback? The game is 11 men. There's 10 other guys on that field besides the quarterback. How did Patrick Mahomes do in the Super Bowl this year? Not very good, did he?
Yeah, and I mean, we have to give that Eagles team some credit. That may be difficult considering you're a Cowboys fan.
Oh, no. I called it. Remember when they played 2 years ago, I said the Eagles would lose 38-35, and that was the final score. I said it in the DM room at Team MBS Media immediately after that game. I said it's going to be 38-35. I wrote articles. I said it was going to be 38-35 Kansas City. This year, I said the Eagles would pound Kansas City, and they did. I look at it more fairly than a lot of people give me credit for.
So the Eagles, you have to give Howie Roseman a lot of credit because they built the team well. Now, whether or not they can keep some of their defensive linemen when their contracts roll over, right? Because they have a lot of defensive players and rookie deals right now. I love the way the Eagles are built. I love the way the Rams are built.
Yep.
Right? Like, if you have a team that has a defensive line that is that good, there's a lot of other things on the team that could be less than perfect, and you're going to do okay.
Yep. And notice what you just said. It was the defensive lines.
Yep.
You're not talking about the quarterback and the wide receiver. Oh, there's more to football than just a throwing game? Yeah. There's a lot more to this game. And that's something that I always talk about. I mean, as you heard me on Tuesday night, Jeremiah Love is my number one candidate for the Heisman Award this year. I don't care what any of these quarterbacks do this year. Jeremiah Love has the opportunity to win the Heisman, and that's just the bottom line of that. And I would love it. Because I grew up being a little bit older than you. I grew up with John Cappelletti at Penn State, right?
Yep.
And if you ever saw the story about Cappelletti and his little brother and all that other jazz, okay, those are the guys who are winning the Heisman Award.
So I had a Cappelletti football card. I didn't know that he had won the Heisman.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. But again, that's because I'm older than you. I was alive for it, right? But that, to me, the game of football has changed from the game that I grew up with, where it was the middle linebacker versus the running back. That was the battle. Like the flex defense came about from Tom Landry because they wanted to stop Jim Brown.
Yep. And the Green Bay sweep.
Well, no, it wasn't designed for the Green Bay sweep. It was designed to stop Jim Brown of the Cleveland Browns. Mm-hmm. And that's where the flex defense came from. Do you know why the zone defense came into playing to being so prominent, though?
Wasn't the Steelers one of the first to run it?
No. This was an answer.
It was the Colts under Shula.
Colts under Shula ran it. But again, everybody started running a lot more zone defense because of Dandy Don Meredith and Bob Hayes, the Olympic gold medalist who was the wide receiver for the Cowboys. Then they were going down the field, left, right, and center against everybody, right? How do we stop this? Well, they figured out how to stop that, the zone defense. So again, the Cowboys history in the NFL is very, very deep, and people can laugh about it, and they can say what they want about it, but that's my team, and it always will be. Just like the Bills are going to be your team, right?
Yes, I've thought this. Like, if Buffalo moves, what would happen to my brain? That's come to me because, especially like when they were going through the ownership change and stuff, was somebody going to move it? Ooh, those were difficult thoughts to deal with. Definitely difficult thoughts to deal with. But it is fascinating to see how the league has evolved. So Greg, I know that, we each have an affinities for 90s NFL, right?
Yeah.
So one of my favorite teams to watch was the Houston Oilers in the run and shoot. And if you're not familiar, if you're younger than Greg and I, the run and shoot was 4 wide receivers, 1 running back. They didn't even have a tight end on the roster.
Nope.
There was no fullback on the roster.
Nope.
It was 4 receivers, 1 running back. The inventor of it, Mouse Davis, pretty much stayed in college. He did coach Jim Kelly in the USFL, I believe.
Right.
I believe that was the Houston Gamblers coach. But then there was Jerry Glanville, June Jones.
Yep.
And I think there was one other offensive coordinator, but Houston ran it. And it's fascinating to watch because basically if you have 4 wide receivers in the field, it means that you always have 4 receivers in the pattern. And in the 1990s, the only other offense that was doing that was the Bill Walsh, the Bill Walsh,
the West Coast, the West
Coast offense. Whereas now that's in the game permanently. Buffalo sends 5 players out on nearly every pass play. We're just not doing it with 4 wide receivers in the field.
Yeah.
The concepts are there. They're just doing it from different personnel groupings.
And that's the thing that drives me crazy about these social media kids who don't understand where these things actually came from.
Right.
Like when I'm telling you, the cover 2 defense was a Tampa Bay creation. Okay. There has always been cover 4. There's been cover 3, but there has never been a cover 2 defense the way that Tampa did it. But again, the reason why there's so much zone in the NFL was because of the Cowboys. The reason why the flex defense came into being was because of the Cowboys to stop Jim Brown. That's where these things all come from. The middle linebacker wasn't even a position in football until Tom Landry made Sam Hupp the middle linebacker for the New York Giants. These kids don't understand it.
Before that, it was 5 linemen, 2 linebackers.
That's right. Yeah. And for the younger people out there, go watch this stuff. It's available to you on YouTube. It's available. Go watch that. That's where football started. And Don Coryell's Air Coryell was a very, very similar offense to what we see in the college game now. It's very similar. But everybody talks about this as being new. There's nothing that's new. No.
Yeah, and I'll say one of the things that football had to learn, or what I should say specifically, football coaches had to learn, right? Because you have a lot of coaches, especially at the college level, who, let's say, are at the same school for 20 years, is they have to learn to trust the passing game, right? So, like, I grew up, I was watching Notre Dame. Lou Holtz didn't trust the passing game, right? Like, he was running veer. He was running like a triple option when other places in college were experimenting with the run and shoot.
Oh yeah,
right?
but he still had Tim Brown. He had Rakeem the Rocket Ishmael. He still knew how to throw that football. He just didn't like doing it as much. That was the
Well,
thing.
right. And in fairness, like Tony Rice, I don't even think sniffed the NFL. Right. Like, I mean,
yeah. Like,
right. The quarterback that was there
yeah.
was a running quarterback.
Yeah.
Notre Dame would have to sub Rick Meyer in to run a passing play.
Well, like I said in the chat room the other day, college no longer develops players the way that they used to. And who did I use? Joe Montana. He was the 6th or 7th quarterback on the Notre Dame list.
Right.
How did he develop?
Well,
he won a national championship. He won a national championship for the Fighting Irish, and then he went to San Francisco, and he only went to 4 Super Bowls and won all 4.
Right.
That's how these kids developed.
But so I'll take the quarterback development thing here in a minute, but where I was going was from I don't want to say this. So if you look at the college game, there's coaches that, let's say, trust the passing game, but they trust the passing game because they're letting their quarterback get the ball out in like a second and a half, right? That would be an air raid if you don't know what I'm talking about.
Yeah.
That's an air raid, right? It works great in college. There's 2 distinct rule changes in college, or rule differences in college.
Yeah.
One would be where the hash marks are is creating space for the wide receiver. You can throw a wide receiver screen. It's a 40-yard change in distance from where the quarterback is to where maybe it's not 40, it's probably 30 yards.
About 30.
Where you're throwing a wide pass, right? Okay. And the offensive lineman can run 3 yards down the line of scrimmage in college. They can only run 1 yard down in the pros. So that air raid stuff in the NFL only works a little bit. If you ran it as much as teams would in college, it would likely end not good for the offense.
No, exactly. And that's why I say the offensive linemen who are coming out, especially now, they need a spring football league to understand the difference. In pads, not just out there in your shorts and your all that. They need that in pads, because the difference in the NFL game is a big difference. I mean, Tyler Guyton last year, I was just like, why did you guys put him out there at left tackle? He was a kid. He was the ninth offensive tackle taken in that first round. Yet the Cowboys put him out on that field. And it was just, are you kidding me?
Bill, thanks for stopping by.
Yeah, exactly. But again, Tyler Guyton, yes, he was a first-round draft pick, but he should not have been out in the field in that first year. He just shouldn't have been. Tyler Smith suffered through a rookie season being called a left tackle by Jerry and Steve, and it's just like, this kid's going to be a great left guard. Now he's a left guard, and he's perfectly fine. He's going to be an all-pro for years. But again, the way that the NFL uses these players is a disservice to the player, first and foremost. But again, I would love to see a minor system, even if it just comes to 6 games.
Yeah, so I do like the point from an offensive lineman development. So in general, for player development, I say it's the jump from year 1 to year 2. So regardless of what Keon Coleman did in year 1, he should be defined more by what he does in year 2. Right. And if a player hasn't made it in year 2, I don't need to see him finish out the 4th year of his deal.
No, really, no. But again, like Javon Walker, when he was taken first overall ahead of Aiden Hutchinson, was just like, what the hell are the Jaguars doing? Because again, he didn't have the same type of tape that we saw from Aiden Hutchinson in college. He didn't. He was in a deeper rotation. And again, these guys who are scouting the players and they're saying, well, this guy's not draftable because he doesn't play. Well, how many reps did James Pierce Jr. actually get last year at Tennessee? He wasn't used a whole lot. And it was like Jalen Carter, the great Eagles defensive tackle. As a rookie, he got beat up.
Right.
His second year, he was a whole lot better. Right? But again, it's the perception that people get because of the social media aspect of things, I find anyway. Like this whole the way that PFF or ESPN or the NFL Network hypes up these players is beyond me. It really is.
Yeah. And there's certain aspects of player development where the draft will be the worst 5 months of player development in that player's life.
Yep.
Right? Yep. Because you can talk to any agent. They're telling you to get ready for the combine. You can go and watch Bill Belichick talk about this. You're a second-year player. You're getting ready for the season. But you're a rookie. You're getting ready for the draft, and you're not preparing the same way.
Nope.
So the number one piece of advice to any player entering the draft is you actually want to make sure that you're still developing as a football player, which is why year 2 is so important.
Yeah.
And then to add into the offensive line piece that you said. So the NFL is governed by collective bargaining, right? There's a players' union. Okay, that union has negotiated certain rights for their players, which includes non-contact practices. I don't know what the specific number of practices are that are allowed to be padded, but I think it's 22 practices the entire year are allowed to be padded.
Yeah.
And
then
you're limited as to when you can do them in training camp. Like, I don't know that in training camp you're allowed to have 2 padded practices back to back.
Nope. You can't. You can't do back to backs. Can't do that.
Right.
This I understand about the player safety aspect of it. I get that, but an offensive lineman needs to be in synchronization with his teammate. The center
and that happens
needs
in
to know
contact.
Yeah.
Yes.
And it just bothers me to no end that the offensive linemen aren't allowed to be in pads, and the defensive line as well, because you look at all the DTs, you don't see a DT coming into this league being a superstar in year 1, except for Aaron Donald. He was the exception. You don't see DTs being an impactful player until 2 or 3 seasons in, which is why I don't give out any grades for a draft the year it happens. No, I give out grades after the 3rd year, kids. That's when you do this.
Yep.
You know, and you even agree with that. I mean, you do not give out grades. The Buffalo Bills had a decent draft. The Cowboys had a decent draft this year. But again, I'm not giving either one of them a grade this year.
So my grading scale for drafts is very black and white and very dry. So every team starts with a C, and with that C, I'm assuming you have 1 starter. For every starter, you go up a letter grade. So you get 2 starters, you get a B. You get 3 starters, you get an A. Okay, but like right now, it doesn't make a point to evaluate like the Buffalo Bills draft because we don't know, is Maxwell Harrison starting? Is TJ Sanders starting? Is Landon Jackson starting? Right? So the Bills grade right now for me is a C. I don't see any, like, one of the corners we drafted is starting. I just don't know which one it is, whether it's Dorian Strong or Maxwell Harrison, right? So Buffalo's going to stick with a C, but I can see a path for 5 of the guys they drafted starting. I see that path, but I'm not going to change my grade until it happens.
That's right. Exactly. But again, and now let's go to this this whole idea of guaranteeing a 2nd-round draft pick as contract, because Bill's here, and Bill has Andrew Berry of the Browns, who did this with Carson Schwarzenegger, and the Houston Texans did this with their 2nd-round pick, Jalen Higgins. I'm just stunned because those are the only 2 2nd-round draft picks who have signed contracts right now.
Yep.
They're the only 2.
Yeah, so we talked about this in the podcast last night. over at Draft Professor. This is huge for the players.
Yep.
Second round picks getting guaranteed money is huge. Now, here's the downside. If a second round pick flames out, and I think the success rate for second round picks is at 50%. And that's measured by, are they starting for the team that drafted them? I believe it's 3 years later. I believe that was a study Charlie Casserly did.
Yeah.
But the challenge with that is that just because if you're a second round pick and you're in the 50% that isn't starting, that doesn't mean that you flamed out. That doesn't mean that you're doing well. But if you're a second round pick and you're, let's say, the second string tight end, or you're a third string wide receiver, that's still okay to me.
Yeah.
Right. If you're producing like kick returns or, being a situational player, that's okay because circumstance, maybe you were a second round quarterback and 3 years later, you're still sitting behind an entrenched start. Right. There's a lot of reasons.
Exactly.
But the guaranteed contract, that's okay if you're on the roster. But the moment you have to cut the second round pick, you're going to hit to lot of dead cap.
Yeah.
That's going to be the biggest issue.
Well, that's why teams are not signing their second round picks right now, because they understand that dead cap hit.
Yeah. Now, we've done some studies at Draft Professor on like dead cap and things of that nature. And ironically, like the Eagles are the kings of dead cap. They have a lot. But as a percentage of the cap, it's staying constant.
Yeah.
Their dead cap as a percentage of cap is staying constant. It's okay to have dead cap. So the difference is when you're doing it for a veteran, you might be signing the veteran with some void years.
Yeah.
So when the veteran leaves, the void years become your dead cap. That's much different than we're going to pick this guy in the draft. And by definition, that half the draft picks you make won't work out. I think it's going to be okay for players in the top 50 to get guaranteed deals. But when you start looking at like Kingsley Suamatea, right? He was picked by the Chiefs at the back of round 2 last year, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay. So this would be, I think Suamatea would be a great case study, right? Let's assume his contract was 100% guaranteed. Okay. What we saw as Suamatea as a rookie led Kansas City to pick Josh Simmons at the same position in round 1 this year, right?
In round 1 this year.
Okay. So Suamatea might kick from left tackle into left guard. We don't know. We can't make a judgment on the pick yet. He's only played 1 year.
Yeah.
But if Suamatea as a pick completely bombs out and the Chiefs want to cut him after year 2, they're going to hit the dead cap for years 3 and 4.
Well, that's why he would be a tradable asset, though, and the other team assumes his deal, right? Like Kaiir Elam is now a Dallas Cowboy instead of being a Buffalo Bill, because again, in the Bill system, Kaiir Elam could not find a spot on that field. It wasn't that he was a bad football player; there was no spot for him.
Right,
that
but
was the biggest.
But if we look at the cap for Elam, Buffalo still has a dead cap.
Yep.
For any part of Elam's signing bonus.
For a signing bonus,
hadn't hit the cap.
That's right.
So
it's a signing bonus.
Even if you're trading this second round pick with a fully guaranteed deal, even if you trade him, you still have a dead cap for whatever the signing bonus.
His signing bonus. So that's but the dead cap thing, again, like you said, it doesn't really matter. Unless, of course, you're talking about moving Dak Prescott and having a $104 million cap hit. No, not going to happen. I mean, that, and Dak, of course, has a no trade clause as well. So everybody who ever mentions a Dak Prescott trade is just stupid. He's not going anywhere. It really is dumb.
So the way that I would look at it is that if second round picks start getting guaranteed deals, and you're a team which is strapped for cash.
Yeah.
Now, why would a team be strapped for cash? Well, if you didn't know this, if you sign a player to, let's say, a 4-year, we'll call it a $120 million deal, and you're going to guarantee $40 million of it, and $5 million is paid this year, $35 million is paid in the future. You still have to take the $35 million as an owner, and you have to put it in escrow.
Put it
so
in
the
escrow.
owner is paying the escrow $35 million.
Yep.
So if you're an owner that does not have a lot of liquid cash, the second round guarantees now become an issue because you may not be able to escrow. Right. So so Jerry Jones was a billionaire before he owned the Cowboys.
Well,
right. He made his money in oil or whatever it was.
He claims he was, but his real story is I was a very poor man and everything. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But then you could look like the Broncos are owned by Sam Walton. Right. So they have Walmart money. Walmart's not going out of business anytime soon.
No.
Terry Pagula made his billions, and he still has that business.
Yeah.
Some owners, putting that money in escrow is almost zero issue because their books are following, let's say, good accounting practices. But there are two teams that may have an issue with that. So the Cincinnati Bengals, the only way that the Brown family has money is from football. So literally, Paul Brown founded the Bengals.
Yeah.
Paul Brown's only success in life was founding the Cleveland Browns, founding the Cincinnati Bengals. He revolutionized the game. He's a good person to go do research on. Yeah. But the Bengals and Mike Brown don't have a lot of extra money.
No, and neither does the family that owns the Bears. But that
was the other one.
The Lions family has a lot of cash because they're Ford, right?
Yep.
Even Benson down in New Orleans, he's got money. She has money. Even Irsay has money. The Irsay girls now run the franchise. They have money, so they could do those things. But if you don't have that type of asset, you're screwed. You're basically screwed. And that's where these other owners are going. No, I can't do this.
Right. So when you start looking at guaranteeing a second round pick, you look at the mechanics. Don't just look at the contract. Yep. Look at the mechanics of everything that has to happen around it. So that means the owner is going to have to shell out. So if a second round pick, I'm not an expert on what they're going to make, but my guess is their rookie deal is going to be worth $15 to $20 million in total.
No, they're lower because
so we're talking $10 million.
Well,
maybe 7.5.
We're talking 12. We're talking early in round 2 because it goes by the position that you're drafted in as well, right? Right. So if you're Jalen Higgins, I think he's getting around 11.67 guaranteed. Schwessinger's $12 million guaranteed. It depends where you were picked, right? But again, like Bill said, Jimmy Haslam, he owns the Flying J and all that other jazz. He has no problem guaranteeing Schwessinger's deal. And the Cowboys don't have any issue giving Ezra Raka a deal. But again, they haven't done that because they understand the escrow flight of the other owners.
Yep. And then I was just able to find on the internet. I'm actually pasting it into the chat right now. Yeah. So we're talking a second round pick is going to be right around $10 million. Yeah. If the contract is fully guaranteed, that means that the owner has to take $10 million and put it in escrow. Yep. So did they have an extra $10 million on their books? Right? That's really what that comes down to. And there will be some teams where their checking account may not have the extra $10 million in it.
That's right.
I'm just saying,
yep.
So you can see teams.
How can the Green Bay Packers guarantee a second round pick? Who's their owner? Right. Their fans are.
Right. So you I don't know when the league checks hit the owners. No, the players make their money every week. So the players make money from week 1 to week 18.
Yep.
And they're getting paid 17 times in 18 weeks. That's when the players get paid by their team, unless they have a bonus written into the contract for another day and time.
That's right.
Okay. However, we don't necessarily know, like, are the networks writing the NFL a check every month? Are they writing them one big one? Are they writing them every quarter? We don't know when they get paid, but the reason why I point that out is that, the draft happens in April.
Yep.
But if the first time an owner is going to get a network paycheck is sometime in August, they may not be able to pay that fully guaranteed deal into escrow.
Okay, but the NFL season itself always starts in March, and that's why free agency happens in March. Right. So again, the dates that the NFL pays, we don't know. But again, all of this sort of stuff is interesting for us to follow, but most fans just care about having their second round pick being on the field.
Right.
Right.
So the theory I was going is that if second round picks become guaranteed and owners are gun shy, and I think the two teams that I would look at would be the Bengals and the Bears, just from the standpoint of what is the cash flow of those owners, you might start seeing them have to trade out of their second round picks because they don't want to put all that money into escrow. So they'd rather have multiple third round picks than a better player in round 2 because they don't want to have to guarantee the money.
Yeah, it's totally bizarre the way that they're doing this. And again, Bill's right here. It's why the NFL is allowing private equity firms to purchase up to 10% stake. Teams like the Bengals, Bears, and Vikings are going to need that for picks to be fully guaranteed. So that's what's happening. It's very strange because Jerry Jones doesn't need no private equity team coming in.
Right.
What do you make of the Hunt family in Kansas City trying to get all the renovations done for Arrowhead without them spending a single penny of that? Are you kidding me? The Hunt family, who are worth $25 billion.
Okay.
Jerry Jones built AT&T out of his own pocket. That is one thing that I applaud Jerry Jones for doing. He built that stadium out of his own pocket. No taxpayer dollars.
So I think it's what type of business owner are you? So I admire Jerry Jones as a business owner.
Yeah.
I may not be a fan of the personality of the human, but I admire him as a business owner. The same way I admire Mark Cuban as a business owner and Elon Musk as a business owner. Like, I admire them for their ability to run a business, politics or personality aside. But the reason I say that is you don't become a billionaire by giving away money. I'm just saying, like, he's got every single NFL owner minus the Packers. They are a billionaire.
Yep.
Right. They are. And if the Brown family is not a billionaire, the family that owns the Bengals, that goes to show you how bad of a business owner they are. Right.
Yep.
Okay. So the reason I say that is I'm okay with what Jerry Jones did. I'm okay with what the Hunt family is doing. If the Hunt family can get public money to build them a stadium, the issue is the public has control of the stadium. That means they can use it for concerts. They can use it for other things. Jerry Jones, being a business owner, building AT&T with his own money, said, well, if I build it, I own it.
Yep.
And he can monetize that ownership.
You better believe he does. He has the biggest rodeo in the world coming to AT&T. He has concerts in there like you wouldn't believe. And all that money comes back to Jerry.
Right. Now, you look at, like, here would be an example, like the Bengals when they built, I don't think it was this stadium. I think it was the one before it. But because I'm not a huge Bengals fan, even though I was living here, I wasn't following it entirely. But they wanted to play a high school playoff game at the Bengals stadium.
Yeah.
And the Brown family said no. So they had some, even though the county built the stadium for the Bengals,
Yeah.
The Bengals had a way to veto the high school playing. And I'm like, I remember Fairport High School playing in Rich Stadium.
Yeah.
Like, if you're a high school kid and you get one game in that stadium, you're going to remember that for the rest of your life. Like,
exactly.
So it's a good thing. But to the point of your question, Greg, Jerry Jones monetized his decision one way. The Hunt family is monetizing it by saying we don't want to put the output of $1 billion to build the stadium. They don't want to, right? So it's just a matter of how the business owner of the team chooses to run their business. And I've ran several small businesses, several have failed, one is succeeding.
Yeah.
Right. So I don't fault anybody as a business owner if they're making decisions and they're making money, because like,
but when you live in the state of Missouri and your household income is an average of $68,000, why should your tax dollars be going to support the Chiefs and the Kansas City Royals as well, this way? And right, that's the whole argument I have against the.
You live in Canada. That's a way of life up there.
But no, we have the same issue up here. We have the same issue up here. The city of Edmonton, who built Rogers Place, where they're about to start the Stanley Cup final again, tax dollars were used partially. Now Calgary needs a new arena as well. Well, guess what? The Calgary taxpayers are going to be paying a whole lot more of this. I don't want my tax dollars that I'm paying to the city of Calgary to go to a new stadium for the damn Flames. I could care less about the Calgary Flames, but I don't get that. I don't get that option.
The state of New York has had this problem, right? So you look at the demographics of New York State, 90 to 95% of the people live in the 5 boroughs of New York City.
Yep.
Right. So whether you live in Syracuse, Buffalo, Rochester, Oneonta, Long Island, whatever.
Yeah.
All the money that New York State is collecting in your taxes is subsidizing New York City.
Bingo.
New York City does not raise enough taxes to finance New York City. They don't. They need the outside resources, right?
Yeah.
So my parents growing up, with me growing up in Fairport, New York, just to give everybody an idea. I grew up in Fairport, New York. I live in Cincinnati, Ohio now. Where I live in Cincinnati is closer to Fairport than New York City is.
Yep.
Like, that's how big New York State is. Like,
right.
It takes 10 hours to drive across.
Yep.
Right? Okay.
Yep.
So where my parents lived, they built a new stadium for the Yankees. They built a new stadium for the Mets. They built a new arena for the Islanders, a new arena for the Rangers.
No, the Rangers were the Rangers are in Madison Square, so that was just renovated.
Okay.
That was renovated.
And then, so then the Knicks.
The Knicks are in
renovations.
Well. Yeah.
The I think I did the Yankees, the Mets. Every New York City team, got a new arena. Before Buffalo.
Before Buffalo ever
Stadium was built in 1973.
Yep.
Right. So
don't say that too loudly, because I'm up here in Calgary where they built theirs in 59 days in 1959.
There you go.
Don't say that out loud, because McChucklehead Stadium, as I refer to it, it's a horrible place to go see football. But again, they're getting the new hockey rink down here. But my tax dollars don't need to go to that. These guys who own that team are billionaires, but they were dumb, because one of the previous owners had land east of the city before it grew. Well, we can't get anybody out there because there's no public transportation. You could have handled that. You could have handled all that. Instead, they stick down to being downtown where the Stampede grounds are, where the Calgary Stampede happens for 10 days every July. And they're stuck because the city doesn't want to lose all that revenue.
Well, and again, if a billionaire chooses to not spend the billions that they have, I don't fault them for making a business decision.
Yeah.
Like
I just want
that doesn't mean
I want the owners to come up with some of this cash though. You show up with some of the money. You don't.
So here's my thing. If the owners are footing the bill to build the stadium, then when Kenny Chesney plays a concert there, the owner needs a cut.
Well, yeah.
Right. But that's what I
fine.
mean. But the government wants somebody else to fund the stadium, but the government doesn't want to give up a cut of the revenue at the stadium.
No, exactly. It's 6 of one and a half dozen of the other argument.
Yeah.
Right?
So I'm one of the most anti-government people you will ever meet. But if I can get the government, if I'm a billionaire and I can get the government to pay for my stadium, and all I have to do is finance the governor's campaign to do it.
Yeah.
That's pennies on the dollar.
That's right.
Pennies on the dollar.
And now you see Jerry, because of all the concessions that he runs in all these arenas, like the SoFi Stadium. Jerry gets a cut of the SoFi Stadium's concession deal. He has a cut in there's I think he even gets a cut in MetLife.
Yep.
Like that's the way he does his business. So that's what he's done, right? But again, the whole thing to me is that all of this has gotten way too big for the normal human being to average out dollars wise. It's like, huh?
Well, and so the NFL is more about corporate than individuals. As much as you're an individual fan, I'm an individual fan. Unless we have a corporation that's willing to buy sponsorships or luxury boxes or things of that nature, we're not the NFL's primary demographic.
No, exactly.
According to me, right? They want businesses to spend advertising dollars.
I went to Super Bowl 30, 1995 in Arizona. Ticket cost me $300. I couldn't get anywhere near a Super Bowl game for $300 anymore. Nowhere near. Nowhere. Not even at the top of the buildings are you going to get a ticket for $300 for a Super Bowl. Right?
So I have an aunt, and I think she's been to 7. She is the chief of staff for New York State Senator Charles Schumer.
Well, there you go.
And that's how she gets to 7 Super Bowls, and she hasn't had to pay a dime.
A dime. Yeah.
Right? So, and Aunt Sally, if you hear this, hi.
Hi. But yeah, I mean, those are the people who now go to Super Bowl games,
Yep. That's where you get your tickets. And home squad, like you're exactly right. You're catering to sponsors. I've talked to plenty of people that have gone to Super Bowls. It's easier. Like, what was it? The stories I hear from my aunt are, whose party are you going to tonight? She would go to the Budweiser party. She would go to this party. So there's all these parties at the city for the Super Bowl. You should just go to the city for the parties and skip going to the game.
Well, you know where that party attitude came from, though, for the NFL? Was the CFL. Because up here in Canada, when it came to the Grey Cup, it's a party for a whole week. Whatever city it goes to, it was a party. And that started back in 48. And the Calgarians always came in whatever hotel it was, in the big city that the game was being played in. They had a horse come through the hotel lobby. Right? Yeah. But again, all of that stuff came from the CFL.
Yep. So to give fans a little bit of perspective, Super Bowl 1 was broadcast on 2 networks. Yep. The AFL had a network. The NFL had a network. Yep. They each broadcast the game. And Super Bowl 1 was not a sellout.
No, it wasn't.
Every Super Bowl since then is sold out.
Yep.
Then there was an iteration, and I believe it was Super Bowl 26, where the entertainment aspect of the game changed. So in Super Bowl 25, at halftime, The Simpsons would air a special episode on Fox.
Yep.
So they would wait until halftime. They would start the episode. It would end by the end of the half. And then when the Simpsons episode ended, you could flip back to the Super Bowl network. And the NFL was livid. That, wait a second, people, because the Super Bowl halftime is longer and stuff like that, right?
Yeah.
So the NFL was livid, and they said, "Why are people tuning away from our product?" So at Super Bowl 26, I believe, was the Michael Jackson halftime show.
Yeah,
and that was the
because
first big halftime show.
Super Bowl 25 was the previous one, and that's when I was overseas about to invade Kuwait, and Whitney Houston sang the best version of the Star Spangled Banner that has ever been sung. Period. I don't care. Nobody else can ever touch that song that Whitney did that night. Nobody.
Yep.
Because I was in a room with plenty of other Marines, and the tears coming down our eyes were real. They were real because we did not know if we were going to survive what we were about to do, right? And that was a very powerful, powerful thing. But again, this Stanley Cup game is about to begin here, and in Edmonton, Canada, a city that I grew up in, these fans know the Star Spangled Banner word for word, and they certainly know "Oh Canada" word for word, as everybody can see. Did you see that 100-year-old one guy, the veteran for Game 3 in Florida?
I did not know.
He was saluting, and he sang every word of the Star Spangled Banner, and you could hear a pin drop in that entire arena except for the singer. What is with that?
Yep.
You know?
So, okay. So Bill corrected. So it was Super Bowl 27. So they made the change between 26 and 27. I was off by a year.
Yeah.
And I actually think, here's a hot take. I like the Canadian national anthem better than the American national anthem.
He's
the song "Oh Canada."
He is now singing the national anthem, and I am saluting because as a veteran, I gained that right October the 10th, 2009. And to me, the Star Spangled Banner is a beautiful thing, but I agree with you. He needs to have the country of America needs a better national anthem than the Star Spangled Banner. I love the Black national anthem much more than I do the Star Spangled Banner. I'd love "God Bless America." When Kate Smith used to sing that for the Philadelphia Flyers, that was special. But the Star Spangled Banner, it never really hits home, except of course, when it's sung at a sporting event like this. But to me, the Star Spangled Banner was how I started every day for 15 years in the Marine Corps, right?
Yep.
And there's only
I like that. "Oh Canada" can be a Billboard hit. Okay, so do we think?
But there is no H in "Oh Canada." It's "Oh Canada."
So here would be cool, right? Let's get a couple different versions of "Oh Canada." Let's get the country version with Carrie Underwood because she's dating or married a hockey player.
No, you don't use Carrie Underwood. You have Anne Murray, who's now retired, who was very successful at singing "Oh Canada." You could do the Guess Who with a rock version of "Oh Canada."
Yeah. And then I want to see Eminem do his version of "Oh Canada." Yes.
No.
Eminem, Kid Rock.
No.
Doing "Oh Canada." Absolutely.
Oh no. Actually, because "Oh Canada" has been changed to rectify the whole issue of being a male-dominated song, and it's all of us command now. And even then, and even before, but years ago, when it was Roger Doucette singing the Canadian national anthem from the Montreal Forum, that man had such a beautiful voice, and I just wish that his voice could be used today. He had such a beautiful voice to sing "Oh Canada" with. But again, Whitney Houston, Super Bowl 25, 1991 was the best version of the Star Spangled Banner because I don't like these clowns getting out there singing the free. That's not the way the song was written, you idiots.
Greg, what did you do with that money I gave you for singing lessons?
Well,
it clearly wasn't used for singing.
Oh, no, I don't sing very well. I learned how to yell. Yeah.
Okay, so Greg, what's your favorite halftime show of all time for the Super Bowl?
My favorite Super Bowl halftime show? Well, I'm going to shock a whole lot of people, but it's when Missy Elliott came out with Katy Perry. Missy Elliott, I love Missy Elliott. I was on my knees going, oh, Missy's back. She's back. I love Missy Elliott. That's my favorite halftime show.
Okay. So when Eminem, like I am rock, like you can probably see like the music behind me is primarily rock. There's a few Taylor Swift that is like, that would be above my right shoulder. There we go.
I have one Taylor Swift song in my playlist. One. They got me to put in Style.
Okay.
Yeah, because I didn't have any Taylor Swift in my playlist, right? So I asked in the Team MBS media room, "Oh, this is one you'll like." Oh, that one, okay, that's fine and dandy. But again, it's
for me, Taylor Swift. I like Style. I like Blank Space, but I definitely like Long Live. I think Long Live is my favorite Taylor Swift song, with Fearless being second.
Yeah, see, for me, Taylor Swift isn't. She's not Whitney. She is not Whitney. Whitney Houston was the voice, as far as I'm concerned. Period. Like when she first came out in the 80s, I was in love.
So here's my first Taylor Swift story, right? So CMT has a show called Crossroads.
Yeah.
Where they do rock and country. And like you can see like Kenny Chesney, John Mellencamp, you can see Martina McBride with Train. Like they'll just combine artists, right? So Def Leppard was on it. Okay. Now they were on it with Taylor Swift, but I didn't even know who she was.
Yeah.
I'm a 80s rock. That's my jam. But anyway, so they were singing and, they did a 30-minute show and they did a song. And I'm like, well, that was a pretty cool Taylor Swift song. No, Taylor Swift sang a Def Leppard song better than Def Leppard did. And I didn't recognize the song. And then like my brother had to point out, no, Jim, that is a Def Leppard song.
What song did she do? What song did she do by Def Leppard? Because I know Def Leppard.
Give me a minute. I believe it was When Love and Hate Collide.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Yeah, so she sang that, and like that's not like it's on a Def Leppard record. I had the record. It's probably on one of the CDs behind me.
Yeah.
But it wasn't the Ride Into the Sun is on that album. That's a better song on that album.
Yeah.
The song from Last Action Hero, I think, was on that album.
Okay.
And I thought that was a better song too, right?
Yeah.
But anyway, so Love and Hate Collide was basically she made me now appreciate a Def Leppard song better because okay. But yeah, I mean, hearing Taylor Swift sing Pour Some Sugar on Me, like, come on, like that's entertainment.
Well, I mean, if you're entertained by Taylor Swift, that's the whole thing, right?
Oh,
yeah.
I am. To
me,
Travis Kelce is a nice guy.
Yeah,
I'm just saying because
Travis Kelce is a very nice guy. All that other
stuff for a while.
Yeah, but yeah, you have a crush on Taylor. You know who I have a crush on, though?
Who?
I have a crush on the female members of a British group from the 80s who have more chart-topping hits than the Go-Go's or the Bangles or any of the other all-ladies bands. Do you know who that is?
Give me a minute. 80s?
80s.
Female.
Yes.
Give me a minute. Yeah, Reba's not English.
No, Reba's not English. They were also
Alison Krauss is English.
No.
Okay, you're gonna have to fill me in because I'm stumped.
They were also on Do They Know It's Christmas in 1984. They were the three ladies besides Sade, who was the only other female that they had.
I know that song. I'm not familiar with who sings it.
Bananarama.
I was gonna guess that actually.
Cruel Summer. They did the remake of Venus and all. Yep. Yeah, I actually just wrote an article which will be out in the next day or two. Why Bananarama is not being considered for the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, which is still a joke. I said the same thing years ago about the Go-Go's. They should have been in, and they finally got in 2021. These guys really drive me bananas at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. They put in these acts who have only been around for 15 years, and the greats aren't on there.
So Ozzy Osbourne, I think, came out on this and said, you can't look at the people in the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame as being the best, because if critics didn't like you,
that's right,
while you were in your prime,
it was Rush. Look at how long Rush took to get into the Hall of Fame.
exactly.
Are you kidding me?
Because the people who write about music, so like music media,
Yeah.
are not necessarily people that made music.
No,
You'll
they're
see
not.
more football media that played football. You see Troy Aikman or Chris Collinsworth. And while I hate listening to Aikman and hate listening to Collinsworth, they at least played the game, right?
Yeah.
So and now I don't know if they can vote for the Pro Football Hall of Fame, but there's still a connection between football media and the people that played the game. But for music, that's not true. It's not like Bob Dylan retires from making music to become a music media critic. That's not a career path.
Exactly. But again, where is Susanna Hoffs and the Bangles or Bananarama in the rock? They both belong in the Hall of Fame. They both belong in there.
Oh, I remember when I have some very vivid memories of Susanna Hoff and some of those Bangles music videos where she was featured. Yes, that she's indelled into at least a portion of my brain.
And she was like older than me. And there's no way that
Is she really?
Yes, she's older than I am.
Okay.
And it was like, huh? Where have you been? But again, it's bizarre the way that all that stuff happens.
Do you know that she was born in Johnstown, Pennsylvania?
Yes, I did.
Okay, wow. So she is 14 years older than I am. Okay.
Well, and she's 6 years older than I am. And when they first came out, I figured, that she was maybe 20, 21. Then here she is. She's 6 years older than me. And I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, so it is weird, like going to a concert in my 50s and seeing like Axl Rose just didn't age well.
I would never have spent a nickel on seeing that. Him and Steven Tyler of Aerosmith are two voices I just don't like. Never have liked them. Don't want.
So I've seen Aerosmith 3 times. I love Aerosmith.
Yeah. So then that's what everybody says to me. They all love Aerosmith. Okay, but you go ahead and have fun.
I saw Guns N' Roses because Wolfgang Van Halen was the opening act.
Yeah.
I was ready to leave. I was ready to leave after the opening act. My date wanted to stay, but like Wolfgang Van Halen, to me, there is a musical genius there. It's different than his father's, but like, Wolfie, if you hear this, I'm a huge fan.
His father came up here in the 80s when they would have Rocktobers, right? Michael Anthony, Alex, and Eddie were all either way high or way drunk that night. David Lee Roth was the only one that was out there doing anything positive. The very next night, the Scorpions. And you want to talk about a rock and roll band. The Scorpions beat the daylights out of the Van Halen guys. And then I saw Van Halen again down in California, and it was the same thing. The three guys were all out to lunch. David Lee Roth was superb. So again, do I have much love for Eddie and Alex and Michael Anthony? No. Because again, when you see these people live, you expect to see what I saw in 1986 when I was at Wembley Stadium the year after Live Aid, and you saw Freddie Mercury on that stage in control, belting out those songs. It was just masterful. I never got to see Van Halen at that level.
So I have seen Van Halen twice, once with Sammy Hagar, then later with David Lee Roth. And then I've seen Sammy Hagar twice, actually, in the last 2 years. So I went to see him at Red Rocks. So I will see any band live at Red Rocks. I may not see them if they come to Cincinnati, but if they go to Red Rocks, I will drive 2,000 miles across country to go watch them. I've seen 3 concerts at Red Rocks.
Red Rocks. I've been to Red Rock 4 times, and that's when I was living in Little Rock. So we would go up from Little Rock to Red Rock. So yeah, I'm with you.
And I just saw Sammy Hagar again at his Vegas residency. So
no,
I'm a huge I just want the live music to sound close to what it does in the CD. So
see, and there's this band from Toronto who's called The Beaches. They're 4 young ladies. The girl in concert sounds so much better live than she does in the studio. Her voice is so much better outdoors live than it is on any of their studio albums, and it's just incredible to watch. They were actually here 2 years ago because the CFL had a tour of them, and they played a gig at every one of the stadiums up here. So I went and saw them. But again, that's the fun part about this world, though, right? You like Guns N' Roses and Aerosmith. I don't like either one of them. Whitney Houston is my number 1 female artist of all time. And saw David Byrne put on one heck of a show. And there's another guy that I do not like. David Byrne. Oh, no.
I recognize the name, but I don't know.
David Byrne was the guy from he was one of the CBGB bands.
Okay.
But yeah, Talking Heads.
Oh, Burning Down the House, right?
Burning Down the House. Yeah. David Byrne I don't like, but I love Blondie. Oh yeah. Yeah. Well, it's been an hour and a half of fun here, Jeff. I want to thank you for coming on The Final Word.
Well, thank you for having me. This is a lot of fun.
Yeah, and we didn't have to talk nothing but NFL stuff. We got away from the NFL. Isn't that fun?
This is a blast. This is a blast. Absolutely.
Yeah. So to everybody who came out and left comments tonight, thank you very much. Please like and subscribe to the Team MBS Media channel. And Jim, I will see you Tuesday night because we'll be doing the South Carolina Gamecocks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
So, all right, everybody, this has been The Final Word. Take care.